Hello everyone, so today I wanted to have a look at the Canon AE-1, which is rapidly becoming one of the most popular beginner 35mm film cameras and just one of the most popular 35mm cameras generally. And I wanted to have a quick rundown of how it works and also share my thoughts and some of the pictures that I've taken on it. So if you are a beginner and you already own a Canon A1 or you're interested in buying one, hopefully this video will help you. So this camera in particular was actually my stepdad's. It's from the late 70s. These cameras were made from sort of the mid to late 70s up to the early 80s, and there were tons made. I mean, millions of these were made. So they're very easy to find normally. They should set you back anywhere from 100 to 200 pounds, depending on condition and lenses and accessories that they come with. This camera in particular was actually used by my stepdad on a trip he did around Africa and Asia. So it's got quite an interesting backstory. And most things actually still work on this one. This camera's actually never been serviced since the 80s, so it's quite interesting and it all still works. So first I wanted to break down some of the basics of how to use this camera, what different things mean. So if you are a beginner, hopefully this will help. So looking down on the right, first thing you will see is the shutter speed selector. So this goes from 2 seconds up to 1/1000th of a second. So quite a wide choice there, and it's also got a bulb mode. So what this basically means is that as long as the shutter is pressed down, the mirror will remain open and you can let a lot of light in. So it's good for long exposures and stuff like that. So that's a cool feature that most cameras have, to be honest. So also on that, you will see in green your ISO selector. You can just select the ISO that you're using. This will influence your light meter, but we'll get onto that in a minute. So make sure you select the right speed that your film is. So if it's 100 ISO or 800 ISO, this camera goes from 25 up to 3200 ISO. So you've got quite a wide choice there. Also here you've got your film advance lever, so you just pushed out when you've got your film loaded to get to the next frame. So to the left in the little window here you will see a film counter that will just tell you how many pictures you've taken, always very handy. And then here is your shutter button with a cable release socket. So if you want to take long exposures, you can put a cable release into this camera. Here you also see there's a little dial which you can move up and down. So if you move it down, that basically locks the shutter. So if you were to advance the film and then decide not to take a picture and put the camera in your bag, you can lock the shutter so you don't have to worry about the camera accidentally firing and wasting a picture, which is really handy. And this is also shown by the A and the L here. The A stands for action, which means that you can take a picture, and L means that it's locked. So if you move this dial up, you'll see a little red light. If you press the shutter, that light will flash 10 times. This is the timer. So this basically means that after 10 seconds or 10 flashes, it will take a picture. So that's quite a handy tool as well. Moving straight to the left here, there's a hot shoe, so you can attach a flash. I won't get too much into that today. I will make a whole separate video about all that. So under the hot shoe, you can see your viewfinder, so you can look into that and you can see the picture you're about to take. You can also focus with that because this is an SLR camera. It means you're looking straight through the lens. You can see the image exactly how it's going to be taken when you're focusing, etc. So that is a good thing to note. You also see your light meter here to the right. So as you can see, it goes from 1.7 up to 22. And when you slightly press down on the shutter, the arrow will move up and down, indicating which aperture you should use based on your ISO and shutter speed that you'd already selected. Now you've also got a little pocket here on the back where you can put a bit of cardboard from your film box so you can remember what film is in your camera. That is also very useful. Now to the left of this, there's this little black button which actually has two features. So the first one is a battery check. So if you press down on that button, have a look through the viewfinder, you will see that that arrow will move, like I said before, and this time it will go either under 5.6 or over. So if it's under 5.6, it means your battery level is fine. If it goes over 5.6, you probably do need to change your battery. The other setting for this is if you did set the timer accidentally and you wanted to cancel it, you can press this button and it will cancel out the self-timer mode and it won't take the picture. So to the left of this, you've got your film rewind knobs. So when you finish the roll, you will pull this up and turn it clockwise to load your film back into its canister. There's also a handy little arrow just in case you forget which direction you need to turn. You can also lift this up and it will open the film back and you can load or take your film out. So that's how you open that. So now to the front of the camera, if you look down to the left, you will see a battery compartment. So mine is actually broken. As you can see, I can't shut it properly. That is something I need to check and get fixed at some point, but I haven't done it yet. Yours should be closed, obviously. So when it comes to batteries, this camera takes a 4LR44 6-volt battery. You can find these all over the place on Amazon or in any hardware shop. These are very common for cameras. Most cameras will use this type of battery. You would use the battery for the light meter or any sort of electrical component on this camera, so it is quite handy to have one, and I definitely recommend putting one in. Then to the right of this, you've got the lens, obviously. This camera uses Canon FD mount lenses. They're very popular. A lot of people don't like these lenses. I personally love them. They're relatively cheap, they're good quality, and there's tons on the market. Currently on this camera, I've got my 28mm 2.8 lens. I've also got a 50mm lens and a zoom lens for this camera. So yeah, they're relatively cheap and you can find tons. So that is a plus for this camera. You will see on the camera there's a red dot. There's also a red dot on your lens. If you line these up and turn clockwise, you can put your lens on, and you will see there's a little, often metal switch to the bottom left of the lens. If you hold that down and turn, you can take your lens off. So that's how you put your lens on and off most of the time for this camera. There's a couple features on the side. My favorite one is the stop down lever. So if you push this in right here, it will preview what's in focus or not when you look through the viewfinder. So depending on your aperture, if you wanted to see what exactly is going to be in focus, you hold this down and you will get a preview of that. It's very useful. I use it quite a lot. And then you've also got the rings here where you can just attach any camera strap. That's pretty basic to like any camera. Now, if you look at the bottom, you will see a few things. You've got your basic tripod mount. Here you've got your film release button. So when you finish your roll, you basically hit this and start rewinding, like I said earlier on, but make sure you hit this button first. It will make your life a lot easier. Now, I'm not going to talk about the other things on the bottom here because they are for accessories, which one, I don't have, so I can't actually show you. And two, I do not think they are a necessity if you are a beginner and you probably don't own it. So I will make more videos about accessories for this camera, but if not, there's a lot already online. So if you are curious about those specifically, you can read up online or watch other videos about that. So yeah, hopefully that was helpful. There's a lot of original manuals from this camera online. So if you want to get a bit more technical and go into specific things, I would definitely recommend downloading a PDF online and properly reading through all that. I would recommend that with any camera you buy because there's always features that you just forget about or that you don't know about. My review on this camera, is it worth it? Is it good for a beginner? Well, it's a bit more on the pricey side. It's still very cheap, obviously, for a professional camera. It's 100 to 200 pounds, like I said earlier, but for a first camera, I still think that's quite a lot. There's a lot of cheaper cameras from brands like Practical, most brands, that you can find for easily under 30 pounds. So if you're just curious about film photography and you want to just try it, I wouldn't probably recommend getting something like a Canon A1 because it's still a bit of money you have to sink into it, especially when you've got to get lenses. And if you want to get accessories, I probably would start with a cheaper camera. But if you own something like a point and shoot, or you definitely want to do film photography and you want to get a step up, I think this camera is very good, especially for beginners. As I said, it's got a very accurate light meter, and that's very helpful if you are new to film photography because it just makes life a lot easier for you. But it's also got a lot of manual features, so you can be as artistic as you want as well. So you do get best of both worlds for that. I also want to add that there's a few variations to this camera. So there's a Canon AE-1, which I have here, which is fully manual. There's the Canon AE-1 program, which has got some automated settings, and then the Canon A1, which was Canon's more professional camera at the time, which is sort of the best out of the series, but also the most expensive. So make sure you have a look at all those too, because maybe some of those will fit your needs more. I love shooting with this camera. I've shot a lot of pictures. As I said, this is my first camera, so I'll show you some of my older pictures, which aren't necessarily the best, but it's very fun to use. It's very easy to use. I find the light meter very accurate. I find this camera very reliable. It has broken down on me a few times. If you look at my video from a couple of weeks ago, you will see that, but it always just seems to fix itself for some reason. I do probably need to get this camera properly checked by someone, lubricated, etc., because it hasn't been since the 80s, as I've already said. So yeah, mine's probably had a few issues because of that, but if you maintain it properly, I think this camera is extremely reliable. It's also very well built. It's a bit on the heavier side, but still fine. It's mostly metal. It's built like a tank, so that is also a plus. So here are a few pictures that I've taken with this camera. It is pretty sharp. Obviously, my choice of lens will influence that as well, and how I focus, obviously, as well. But I do think as a camera itself, it is sharp. You can get fantastic images out of it. I just have always liked the look of the film with this camera. For me, it's the very film look. When people think of film photography, I think these pictures are sort of what they think about. Overall, I do massively like the pictures that have come from this camera. So if you are a beginner, everything I said might have seemed a bit complicated, but it is very easy to learn to use these cameras, and I would definitely recommend this one in particular. I think it's reliable, it takes solid pictures, and as I said, it's very fun to use. There's a lot of different settings, a lot of lenses you can get for it, and just overall a very fun camera to use. If you do have any more questions about this camera, let me know in the comments. I'll try my best to answer. And yeah, I definitely recommend, if you were to buy this camera secondhand off something like eBay, read the complete ads. Make sure if you can that it works, that the light seals are relatively new or at least in decent shape. They are cheap and easy to replace, but it's just something, if you can get them in a good condition, it definitely helps. And yeah, have fun shooting with this camera. Make sure you like and subscribe, and I will see you next week.